Hello and welcome to the last ID update of 2022. Check that
And an
out. We're
apology
there.
for completely missing the last one.
Yeah, you would think there would
Straight
have
up.
been like a decision there. On what date did I say to you, Joey? Oh crap, we missed November.
Oh God, it was like December 7th, 8th. God, I don't
It
remember.
was a
We
long
were
way
way
into
late.
December. Yeah, so sorry about that.
Oops.
Hey, we've already got some people in the chat. Nice to have you with us. We've
I
got.
don't get myself overdoing it.
Let me move to a bigger screen. We've got Kara. Thanks for joining. We've got Andreas. Thanks for joining. The show is a little bit of a, I don't know, maybe a retrospective, maybe of the year that was 2022.
It's
A little
interesting.
bit of super accurate prediction as always
Oh yeah.
for 2023, and maybe a look at some of just the last couple of news stories that have come out at the tail end of this year, because
I'm
there have
surprised.
been some good ones, I think. But without further ado, let's roll that intro for the last time this year. There's only one place for the breaking news in the world of instructional design. The ID Update with Tom and Joe. All the news you never knew you never needed. Only on IDT.
I never knew I never needed that intro.
I know, right? Cool. So, Joey, how have you been?
Good. Busy. It's been an interesting few months.
I know, right?
It's been
More
a
to
bizarrely
catch up on.
especially if anybody's been stalking my LinkedIn and just me in general. It's been an interesting few months. But part of that's going to be stuff we talk about.
Absolutely,
But
absolutely.
how have you been last couple months?
Good, good. I actually went on holiday. I, for a whole week, did not work.
That was weird.
It was very strange, but it was very nice. And because of that, I have Belgian beers from Belgium, which makes me very happy. Hey, Luke, thanks for joining.
Do not.
Good
That's from
to have you
Massachusetts.
here.
Ipswich.
I was going to say, speaking of beers, what are you drinking?
Ipswich Ale, original pale, English style pale ale.
Nice.
From Massachusetts.
Very nice.
So I trusted since 1991. You don't get too many dates on breweries nowadays because so many of them open up since trusted since March.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're
It's
new.
not quite so grand, is it? That's it. Cool. Well, I'm going to have a barista chocolate quad from Castile, which will be hopefully
A
very
lot of
nice.
words that I would suck at if they showed up on Wheel of Fortune. Can you show the bottle?
Do let us know in the chat what you're drinking. If you're drinking, doesn't have to be alcoholic. It could be a nice fizzy pop, a water, a tea, a coffee, the tears of your defeated enemies, whatever you prefer.
That's a better pour. That is so much better.
There we go. Well, for the last time this year, then. Cheers.
Cheers.
I've got a little Christmas gnome. Christmas isn't quite done yet in this house. That's
Man, I appreciate this camera. I'm still looking. I was like, man. So this episode is still not sponsored by Logitech, but I did get a Brio for Christmas, and it is so much better than the C series. Specifically, the lighting auto thing. Like you can tell that my window is open, but with the old ones, like the lighting adjustments, that would just be blinding. And the fact I've got two white-ish screens, these would just be spotlights in my face. So good job, Brio. You haven't pissed me off yet, but whole new year is on its way.
Absolutely. No, it's, I think it's been a bit of a year for that, actually. I think when we look, or certainly when I've been thinking about it today, about sort of what's been the big things that I've noticed change this year, and one of them actually has been the tech quality used by people presenting online. And I'm not so much talking about the YouTube space, because that's always been an arms race for expensive cameras and whatever. But actually, just in terms of webinars and in terms of, events L&D specific, especially like in-house ones, people have really stepped things up, both in terms of camera and audio, but also in terms of like how they're using the software. Like not that long ago, we were going, oh, for God's sake, if I go to one more, online training session, it's just someone on Teams talking at me for 3 hours. That totally still happens. But certainly, I feel like now I'm attending far more sessions where people are doing interesting things, trying out different platforms. Like, all this month, Kara's done a bunch of webinars using Crowdcast. I attended some the other week with someone using Demio. I've had, funny enough, I ran into someone else using Melon the other day, which was cool.
Yeah, I was on a podcast recently. I was using Melon. I was like, neat. I know that one.
One slightly disappointing thing is that Melon seems to have been acquired by Streamlabs.
Oh no, that's not good.
So how long it's got left, I don't know. But we shall see how that goes. But yeah, so I that's been. I was trying to think of something positive that happened this year.
There are a couple things positive that I can't. I'm the wrong person to say that, actually, given that the biggest thing that has happened to me in the last 2 months is my dang near complete removal from actual proper L&D positions. Maybe I'm not the right resource for this. But part of it could be what we talk about today.
Yeah, but just before we go into the topic proper, I thought that point was quite interesting, because I was chatting to someone about this the other day, and in some ways, I think those that have maybe worked in L&D and take a step away from it sometimes end up with a much better or clearer view of L&D as a whole compared to another industry. Because I think there are a lot of us that are so heads down in what we are doing in the industry about where L&D is, where we think L&D should be, what we need to focus on. We never get that from another industry's perspective.
Okay. I want to jump on that.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of what I'm dealing with right now. It's actually going to be part of, because when we shot about it, I shot kind of over the topic, on topic to you of what I'm experiencing right now, which is how L&D never leaves you. And I think that's a really good point to it. Because right now, one, if you know that the hilarious story with Etsy is, the super quick version is Entry was very interested in me because they used a platform that I was a trainer for. And that I got let go of for the exact reason that Etsy ended up hiring me. Hardy har har. But in coming over to Etsy, now I'm training their staff. Actually, we have a couple other new hires that are coming in, and now I'm like, hey, you're training, or hey, we need documentation. We're looking for documentation on this stuff. And I was like, I have thoughts there. So I think to your point of kind of we'll just go with a different appreciation. I think for me with L&D, it's kind of like the new baby. The new baby's cute, and so you have to live with it. Right? So when you've got to live with it, when you got to live with L&D, you have to deal with all of the ups and downs, and you're always having to compete with the downs. And there's a lot of struggles if you're in those jobs in L&D specific, because you're the go-to, you're the central point for it. However, for a case like an Etsy, for a case where I'm kind of coming in and bringing it in, it's not I need to live with it. It's a nice to have. It's a delighter of I can be an L&D professional. I can do really cool L&D things and bring that knowledge in to something that doesn't ask for it. Which means all they do is see kind of the benefits and how it can really enhance. I'm not up against stakeholders who are trying to weigh me up against metrics that they don't understand. I instead have a group that says, that's really cool, and I think it's going to help us more. Because you just got your mind wrapped around it differently than shove it in PowerPoint. So I think you're dead on. Now that I'm not there, now that I'm not living with the L&D child, I get to just enjoy it as a nice to have from time to time. It pops in and it's cute, and hopefully it does not scream.
Yeah, I must admit, as an uncle who saw all the nephews today, they were loud and sticky, and yeah, it was unpleasant. So maybe more distance, but
Loud and sticky. The two adjectives. Those are the two adjectives you want for kiddo.
This is it.
We're in
Hey
talks
Morgan, how you doing? And Luke
I literally just
sorry.
came in from ultrasound.
Oh wow! Congratulations.
Like that's what I did an hour ago. Was baby ultrasound for May.
So obviously this is the highlight of the day, which is good.
Yeah, totally. Loud and sticky.
Luke said here, I've taken a big step back recently from the design and development in L&D, and it's been such a breath of fresh air to get a different perspective. Yeah, absolutely.
You know what? It's not even just the different perspective. It's just refreshing.
Yeah.
To be able to say, all right, the problem is that this team just wants it's just really looking for a better way to be educated or something that's more sustainable, and me being able to come and be like, I can provide that. I know how to provide that. Yeah. And not having to deal with, here are 70 people to talk to, and here are metrics that we really care about that we don't know how to track later. Yeah. And we need a delivery process that, you know, we need to think about like this holy crap long-term delivery process. And I also appreciate from the other side of that, of me doing exactly what I'm doing the way that I'm doing is kind of what creates the problem that drives L&D insane. But I can plan ahead of that, right? And that problem, to be really direct, is look, it's a team that made its own documentation and they shoved it within their team. They've siloed it in their team. But I can at least look and be like, all right, I know that's a problem, so I can think beyond that and plan ahead for it. So again, it's a nice to have. It's a benefit. It's not, how are you going to plan for this? Like, just shut up and trust that I will. And
yeah, like, but, okay. And it's interesting. It kind of touches on something that, it's funny, for a little while, you heard a lot about it. And then it went away. It seems to have gotten very quiet again. But that's knowledge management. And company knowledge bases.
Oh God, yeah.
And
I should talk to Angela. She's from
this is it. Like, knowledge management is such a niche career area, right? Like corporate librarians is how I always thought of them. And it sounds super simple, but as we all know, documentation is not simple.
Yeah, it's an infrastructure kind of job.
It is. It really is. And yet I see so many companies with no form of either formal or even informal knowledge management. Nothing is written down. Nothing is documented. Or if it is, no one knows where the bloody hell it is. Someone totally wrote it down at some point. You know,
this is me working my job security right now, actually, for the Etsy crew, because they have the same problem.
Yeah. I think it's super interesting because I interesting enough, like recently, like a lot of my role as like a head of learning design has kind of become almost logistical in nature. By who, when, how, with what equipment, etc.
Right.
And it was quite nice actually going, we're going to build a knowledge base. Just going, that's all I'm going to do for a little bit. I'm going to focus on that and actually documenting stuff, and you know, taking a little bit of a step back from that, the next course, the next thing we need to build, and focusing on that more holistic view. Really changes your kind of view of what you ought to be doing.
It's the old defragmenters, like Windows 98. Like, this sucks. Why is everything running so bad? And then you look at defrag, you hit the defragment button, and you see like all the different colored rectangles, and then you start seeing them like move and become color coded, and it's so refreshing. I'm like, this feels nice. It's nice to see colors together.
Quick note for anyone using a modern computer: do not defragment your computer. It is bad for solid state drives. It will kill your drive very quickly.
I did not know that.
Don't do that, because they don't store data physically, because they store it electronically. Every time you overwrite the data, it kills the cell a little bit. So they have a natural lifespan. So defragmenting involves very rapidly deleting everything and rewriting it in different places. So naturally starts killing the drive. There we go. Yeah, exactly. I think Morgan's spot on there. It's like a 250 slide PowerPoint presentation. The information's in there somewhere, but God knows where. Yep. So funnily enough, that actually, it kind of touches on kind of one of my personal regrets for 2022 is not allowing more time for that step back and reflect view of, what's the industry doing, but also what am I doing within the industry? I think this year I got very absorbed with what is the job in front of me. And at times that's been my fault, and I think at times it's been unavoidable. It happens to, I think, everyone at some point. But also a focus for 2023, and I guess my hope maybe more for the industry in 2023 is to have a slightly more broad view, to look beyond the, oh my God, we need to do a thing.
I think that's going to be forced.
Sorry?
I think that's going to be forced. I think the industry next year, the industry is either going to figure out what it wants to be, or it's going to get slapped so hard in the face.
I think so.
That it's going to cripple itself. It's going to rubber band backward. Here's my logic. 2020, boof, thanks COVID. 2021, oh my gosh, this went boof. So you get a lot more people, the beginning of the relevancy conversation, the beginning of credibility, the beginning of the industry becoming kind of serious. But on the same token, which is something you and I have talked about quite a bit in this last year, was where are the standards? Because you brought all this in, but there was nothing that said whether or not stuff was good. This is the rise of the academies. This is the rise of just kind of crap, for lack of a better word. It's 2021, 2022. What the heck have we been talking about? What have a bunch of our things been? It's been two topics. Two big things have happened. One, we continue to be like, what the heck's up with the standards? But the other thing is a direct response to this thing happening. A ton of acquisitions. Deloitte putting in billions. I just learned that Blackboard got bought.
Yeah.
I know that. 2022, the year of acquisitions, the year of, as a result of all this, and the industry being like, this industry is exploding and it's going to continue to explode, a bunch of big companies started buying into that. The only direction from here is that's going to start needing to be provable. Like, those companies that made the big investments are going to need to start seeing what those actual results are, or they're going to start abandoning those tactics. They're going to start cutting those budgets. I mean, why exactly did we get into this? The industry is going to need to actually own up to the credibility it created for itself in the last 3 years, 2 years.
And
that's where I see it going. Natural direction.
Yeah. And I think that there's a couple of other potential considerations in there, is that like, not all the acquisitions this year were the same. So we had, for instance, eLearning Brothers continuing to just eat everything that it can get its hands on. I've said before, I'm not a fan of market consolidation. I think it's bad for consumers in any industry. However, at least at the heart of eLearning Brothers, you have what I consider to be, based on what I've seen and what I've been told and what I've sort of been to and watched, people who do at least love L&D. They get what we're trying to do. They're in the industry. They're not buying it from an immediate kind of stakeholder profit perspective. They do seem to be buying with some kind of L&D offering in mind. The flip side of that are some of the biggest investments and purchases have been from venture capitalists. Venture capitalists do not give a flying fuck about the industry. What they care about is return quickly.
Yep.
If you're owned by venture capitalists,
it's going to get siphoned off. Probably.
Yeah, this is it. If you're owned by venture capitalists, if you go 2 years without being sold, it's a miracle.
Yeah,
because all they do is hand things to each other.
Yeah, that's what when I worked at eBay, we got bought and sold, 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 and that's not a joke. That is the number of times. And then when a venture capitalist company bought eBay Enterprise, which was a marketing, an omni-channel marketing agency firm, they chopped it up into 4 pieces and sold all but the one they actually bought the company for, which was loyalty affiliate. So we were just like, okay, bye. But
I think this is it, and I think that's going to be the difference in how we see the cut. We kind of discussed it before, didn't we? Like with storyline getting that massive investment, and how we think that might influence their decisions in terms of future updates and what they do and don't do, and do and don't fix.
As a heads up, we kind of lost you for a little bit, you for a moment. You're a little buzzy. This could have been you. This could have been me. This could very well be mine because you're still very blurry, but it looks like the YouTube's okay. So this is actually, now I'm thinking about being mine. This might be a me fault thing.
Dum dum dum. Well, it couldn't be the ID update without a technical issue.
Right. Well, I mean, the last time we had it was you.
Yes,
I think the last time it was yours, and I took a screenshot of that.
I know, right? It's a magic moment.
But yeah, now I'm looking on YouTube and look like I'm the blurry one. This might be a me thing.
Okay.
I'm gonna check on all the things real quick, and then you can talk about stuff while I check the things.
Yeah. Well, as we're checking some, Morgan says it's just you, so we don't really mind if it's just you.
Yeah, I've heard that before. Thanks, exes.
We mind if you're not here, Joey. We would miss you. There we go.
I didn't. Not the last. Like there was a whole episode without me, and it's like it was like one of the best viewed ones. So clearly,
it really was. Yeah. In fairness, it wasn't like we just pulled someone off the street. We had Heidi Kirby come and join us. Yeah. It's that's a tough show to beat. But we will do our best today. Just want to say hi to some other people that have joined. S. Holcomb, sorry I don't recognize your name. Olga, thanks for joining us. It's never too early to start on the beers. Not at this time of year, anyway. These aren't real days. I kind of always think the days between Christmas and New Year, they're kind of like, technically they're days, but no one counts them. Like the calories that you consume within them.
It's the end of the year. Like at this point, who cares?
Exactly.
I'll start from scratch in 2 days.
I could certainly join you on the couldn't be happier about this year ending. Absolutely.
Welcome, S. I don't know S's name. Welcome, Holcomb.
Watched the replays a lot, but never joined a live. Well, now you've joined a live.
Welcome to the party.
As you can see, it's so much incredibly better to be here live. I can't quite tell you why, but just trust me, it is.
You did move to Belgium, Olga. That I remember. I remember that.
Yes, I'm very, very jealous. We were there for a day on our holiday, and it's never long enough. Every time we go, we're like, we should just come back here for a while. We never get round to it, but it is so nice. So lovely. And hello as well to Jen Qatar TV. I'm assuming that's right. Thank you for joining us. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think you've joined us before, but thank you for joining us. That was, I guess, my initial reflection.
So I actually I want to bounce back on the market consolidation thing.
Go for it.
I'm less nowadays specifically, just because of really kind of the internet and the resources that are out there for smaller groups. I've actually started to pull a little bit back on we'll go with hatred, my knee-jerk hatred for market consolidation. And here's why. Because of what happens afterwards every time. And I'm going to be a nerd for a sec. The closest thing that I can relate this to is like the World of Warcraft stat squish in expansion. Like everything has kind of gone in its holy crap directions. Now we're going to stat squish this thing. We're going to consolidate it all. But what happens in return, what usually happens as a result of that, is that consolidation, one, becomes kind of very focused and really kind of watered down. And from that comes a lot of new companies, a lot of new technologies, and a lot of things that challenge that space that they get very comfy in, which creates just better, smarter, cooler directions for the industry. See what you literally just talked about regarding like streaming services. The stat squish was Teams, Skype, Teams, Zoom, like that's your stat squish. But from that became, this is boring, we can do it better. And then off we go into all these cool tools and web tools and a new reimagining of the industry. So we get more things. Yeah, it might stat squish again, but if that didn't happen, would those have really been that explored?
I guess this is the thing. It's that I guess I kind of get disappointed because you look at trying to think what's the best. Figma is a great example of this, in fact. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm on record as being a phenomenal fan of Figma. Love it. Think it's a brilliant platform. It was very rare that I would log, and I use Figma a few times a week, but at
Okay.
least 50% of the time I would log in and there would be some form of update pending or a patch for something.
Thanks, Firefox.
Hey,
So dumb.
but my argument here is that's a good thing. There was
Mm-hmm.
constant iteration. Something was wrong, they fixed it. Something was ready to go, they sent it. Since being purchased by Adobe, that has undeniably slowed, quite noticeably.
Yeah,
My
I guess.
concern. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. No, I say. I think we're about to say the same thing. So your concern.
So my concern is Adobe had a competitor to Figma, XD. It sucked. Rather than fix it, faced with competition, they simply bought out the smaller company. Now, maybe Adobe's going to be an amazing guy about the whole situation and let Figma continue to be Figma. I would stress the idea that I've just said maybe Adobe will be the good guy in this situation.
If anything, the moral of this story is brand loyalty should not mean as much as maybe it did in the past.
This is it. And I think it helps with that because we got even it, I'm not going to argue that Figma is a good guy company. There are no good guy companies. There are just companies. Their objective is to make money. Simple as that. Otherwise, they would be a charity. If you started a company, you did so to make money. That's fine. But we have to remember that. Same reason. How could the?
I swear, I think this is mine again. Oh, not me this time. Uh-oh.
I think we're back.
Yeah, it's nice it's the same thing. You're back, which means they're back.
Oh, my face is frozen. Boo.
Problem is I didn't get to see how it was frozen.
I did.
I didn't. Like when I was frozen and I thought it was you. You had like the best resting bitch face. It was impressive.
That was my let's be real about this situation face. I have no idea where I got to. Basically, the overriding point was my issue with market consolidation is that we no longer see big corporations improve their product. Instead, we see them buy out competitors. And yes, we can kind of go, oh, yeah, well, maybe we would never have used the competitor. Maybe we would, maybe we wouldn't. Some people certainly do. But I think more broadly, what it engenders is laziness.
Okay, that's fair.
Why, as a big company, if I can buy anyone that threatens to disrupt the market, why would I ever bother to, off my own back, innovate?
All right, all right. So I will pull mine back from maybe a more meager appreciation too. I've found a silver lining that I like.
Yes.
Yeah. There we go.
Yeah. Like, well, prime example, I think Figma will now get more users. Because I think the last few Adobe XD holdouts will move over to Figma.
It's a matter of, but who cares and how much? Like, are they in for the experience that they could have had?
Yeah.
Literally just talk about this with Yeti because I'm not on the Yeti because my Yeti keeps breaking from just crap manufacturing. It's one of the best microphones in the industry, but the manufacturing is so terrible. And then you brought up that kind of during maybe COVID and whatnot, just so many people were in it that all they could do was suck so they can get stuff out the door. Is Captivate still alive? I should check in on Project Charm.
And technically, it still exists. I mean, Adobe have just got this phenomenal marketing strategy of saying nothing at all. Like, I know they did the whole kind of big Adobe Live, I want to say, event in Vegas. And lots of people left that saying, you know, big changes, big movement, good stuff. But since then, not a peep.
I feel like we're gonna start aligning. I kind of want to do this. All right, here we go. Here we go. I know it's late in the year, but Adobe Captivate is the Quark Express of L&D tools. That's where I'm at. It is constantly outdated. It never gets updated, and somehow it lingers so long.
Yeah.
How are they doing? Now I gotta look them up. How are you guys doing, Quark Express?
I mean, this is kind of it. Like Joe Suarez on his channel, e-learning out loud. Go and subscribe if you haven't already. Did a brilliant video, basically describing it as the Cybertruck of the L&D world. Because technically it exists. There is this one that they roll out and show at events.
I love it. This is brilliant. This is absolutely brilliant. So I typed in Quark Express.
Go for it.
And feel free, fan club, to do the same thing. Just Google Quark Express, and usually you get your ad sponsored links, and then you get like the people also ask, right? My people also ask, the very first one is, does anyone still use Quark Express? Like, that's
I'm sorry, this platform still exists, full stop. I thought it had actually been killed.
I thought so too. Like I said, it lingers. So if you Google, what was your people also ask? Your top one. Does anyone, because mine was, does anyone still use Quark Express?
Yeah.
There we go. Does anyone still use Captivate? I should type in Captivate.
I mean, their website's all new and snazzy.
First one for Adobe is Adobe getting rid of Captivate? That's a solid question. Honestly, like, that's one of those things you could be very confused with.
Yeah.
But anyway, I found that
I must admit, I dislike Adobe's use of code names for projects, because they recently did one with what is an awesome tool, but I had no idea it was even going to exist until it suddenly went into public beta, which was Adobe Podcast. Because it had been project something or other. I can't, the name was just some random whatever. But yeah, then earlier in the month, they were like, oh yeah, we're launching the open beta of Adobe Podcast for the first 2 tools. And the first 2 tools are like a microphone sound check, where it can tell you, oh, there's too much reverb or too much gain on the mic or not enough gain, and all sorts of things for you. And another tool that is like an auto cleanup for an audio file. So you can get your recording, upload it, and it will clean it up for you.
And you can do, and they're doing kind of like the audio. Well, I mean, there are many tools, but I'm just going to connect it to Audiate.
Yes.
Because it's an AI.
Yeah,
it'll transcripts in words, and then it will give you the opportunity to just edit words specifically.
This is it. I think it's going to be a cool little project, but had no idea it existed till the open beta, because they insisted on using some ridiculous freaking project name. And not really talking about it ahead of time. And I don't know. I think at least in most tech spaces, like when we had, Genoa and Lovelace and all these other things going on from NVIDIA and AMD and Intel, they used a code name, but they also spoke about the technical specifications of the product they were making.
That's true. Okay, I was about to say, I was like, I don't know if I disagree with that. And then I can say this comfortably as somebody who, for Genesis, just announced a product. We did a product announcement yesterday, but we also talked a lot about what was in it.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, I was like, well, you don't want people to just speculate off of nothing. So, but they provide something, so we're fine.
But this is, I use NVIDIA as the most recent one as an example. Their 40 series graphics cards, so the 4090, 4080, all that malarkey, they were the Ida Lovelace GPUs. Ida Lovelace was the project. They name all their projects or nodes, I should say, after like famous computer scientists. So this was the Lovelace series. But before they announced that it was the 40 series, it was, Lovelace is going to have X many CUDA cores, a clock speed of this, a gain boost of that, all these different things they were already talking about. So you weren't allowed to, like you say, speculate on nothing, but they weren't necessarily tying themselves into product SKUs that early on. And I would totally get why Adobe wouldn't want to tie itself into a product SKU right at the start. But clearly, this was Adobe Podcast from day one of the idea to launch. Like, it's a set of tools to allow you to quickly create a podcast. What else are you going to call it? You'd be daft to use anything else. But one thing I did think about when I saw that product, actually, and I guess we'll get back to, maybe this is a bit of a kind of prognostication for 2023. It's a really good implementation of AI in audio editing. Do we think we're at the point where we're going to see more AI kind of integrated into media creation tools and authoring tools, or do you think it's still a bit further off for most platforms?
You got to take that in two angles, right? Because the only true AI thing that is really connected from a functional L&D thing has been AI audio recording. That's it. But that's it. That's the thing that has been able to like survive the test of all the things. And I don't think that's one of those things that's not really a problem in my opinion. Like, I like that. Yay AI audio. At least make that aspect of things simple.
Yes.
Right. And that's like your Synthesias and I forgot some of the other like AI, and then like the AI creation, AI video talking head kind of tools. Like those things, I like those. I actually love those tools.
Yeah, I mean,
long term.
If someone here knows more than me, please do correct me. But my understanding is that pretty much everything that we're calling AI here is actually machine learning, as opposed to true AI, if you will.
Yeah, it is the machine has been able to adapt better than other things, because on the flip side of the AI conversation, things like Synthesia and whatnot, I love those tools because from a learning perspective, they're future proof. They're like, if I record something and I leave a company and I need to edit, somebody needs to edit 15 seconds of that video that I did the audio recording, but I'm no longer part of the company. That sucks. You're redoing the whole audio. Being able to have a tool that is like static and is not dependent on whether or not a person is hired, that's pretty awesome. I like that from a functional perspective.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the flip side of that. What is the industry willing to accept, and how far is AI going to go before it starts becoming a big question? And if you want to know where I'm going with this one, let's talk about AI art. And that fantastic, holy crap, phenomenal thing that happened. What happens when you get the AI art tools and those start making their way in? How cool would it be to have an AI tool that like is able to build a Vyond, is able to build an animation off of very little information? Well, what happens when you start looking at copyright law? What happens when the AI starts to look really similar? What happens when you start digging into some of those companies that, the security risks and those types of things? Man, functional, cheap, oh my gosh, amazing. Is the industry going to accept it? How far are they willing to accept it? I think it's going to be an interesting conversation.
Yeah, do you know what? I find conversations about AI are really tricky, partially because I know enough to know that in this particular field, I am a complete dullard. I've got no idea what I'm talking about 99% of the time. So I try and keep it to, in my opinion, stuff, as opposed to fact. I think this is a fact thing. But I try and follow a lot of what Donald Clark says about this. Donald Clark, if you don't know him, big name in L&D, but specifically in the AI field. He's been working with and creating AI models for creating full courses for a long time, doing really interesting stuff. And he points out that every time in history there has been a big shift in what technology can achieve, there's been an immediate backlash of some kind.
Yeah,
so we have to remember that there was a time when schools and universities were going to ban YouTube and Wikipedia because they were going to make it too easy to cheat on things. Now they're saying the exact same thing about ChatGPT, and on and on it goes.
I want to go more cult. I want to go more cult. I want to go more niche on that one.
Go for it.
All right, chat. There's a lot of you. Who remembers the TI-86? The Texas Instruments 86 model calculator. As far as I know, it is the only calculator to actually be banned. Like you were not allowed to own that calculator. You were not allowed to like bring it to tech. You can like own, like who was going to stop you? But like you couldn't bring it to like SATs. Like you couldn't bring it to any sort of testing because the TI-86 was just too powerful. There was just too much built in for things like calculus. Like it was basically a cheat sheet.
But then
So they
similarly,
switched back and called back to the TI-84 plus,
and
that became the standard.
I remember being told at school I must learn mental arithmetic because I wouldn't always have a calculator with me. It's like, 20-year-old Tom wishing he could go back and go, yes, you will. Ignore them. Don't waste your time. You don't need any of this.
This is all right. So,
but it's the same thing, right? 20 years ago, it was you won't always have a calculator. 10 years later, we did. Today, it's oh my god! If we allow AI to start doing this, no one will ever learn anything. Yes, they will. Like without being too flippant about it. Degrees aren't cheap. Like really, seriously, they're not fucking cheap. I am not going to pay that much money and then just do nothing. Similarly,
go ahead.
So no, it's just I think it's the same in the L&D space. Because AIR, I think is an interesting one because we've got but if you hadn't used AIR, you would have paid an artist. No, I would have found a free stock image. There is no scenario in which I'm commissioning an artist in an average piece of e-learning. So no one is losing work here. Those using AIR. Yeah, those using that are the same people that would otherwise be going to Envato Elements or iStock or whatever and pulling an image from there.
It is resource and knowledge consolidation. Let's get back into consolidation. You're stat squishing. I typed in TI-86 calculator into Google. I'm liking these people also ask, are TI-86 still used? All it says, the TI-86 has been discontinued in bold. There's no other text. Like, whoa!
Love it.
Wow! Holy crap! Anyway, so but I guess all right. So no issues from an L&D perspective. That creates a normalization of that technology in industry that is kind of abusive in other things, though. So
yes,
I kind of hope that it doesn't track. I still don't like necessarily like go steal other things. But there's a big difference between I'm gonna snag a screenshot from something versus I'm gonna actually take possible work away from somebody else. That seems like a much darker topic. That's like another episode. That's a 2023 topic on the outsourcing of resources.
Yeah, but an interesting point actually. Olga put message here again. It's a moral and ethical side of using AI. They're still far from being figured out. Absolutely. But I also don't think we should delay our adoption of technology until we have it all figured out. We haven't really ever figured out the moral or ethical implications of anything. Not properly, not really. We're actually not very good at that as a human race because we can't even agree what morals are. Not universally or where they come from.
Right, so let's not call it morals and ethics then. Let's just call it industry laziness. Let's call it the bastardization of standards and making things boring. You want to talk about like the worst AI? You want to talk about like the worst consolidation thing that especially the industry for us have just gotten sick and tired of, even though it does so much. The next button. This sad little thing that you didn't really have when you were doing analog stuff. Even the old slide decks, you had to be like, please hit the button, please hit the slideshow button, but like the tape kept rolling. Now we can stop when we have a next button. Oh my gosh, the world opens up when you have that kind of interaction. But now it sucks, and we have to. And as a result, we the industry guys try to find creative ways to not have an X button, do something interesting, branching, and all that. So I would just I don't know, I wouldn't call it like a moral and ethical thing, I would just call it succumbing to mediocrity. Lowering standards, I'm trying to think of a good way to do it. I'm trying to like go into like the Adobe Figma problem, right? Of wow, all of this innovation has just been stymied. Oh, I know exactly where to go with it, but that's actually going to lead to the next topic.
Yeah, I guess just on that part, I don't think all of that space has to lead down that route. I think it can, and I think there will be, and there probably already are, courses being created with outputs directly from a large language model, dumped into a facilitator guide or dumped into screens of e-learning, and of course that's going to be utter crap. I don't think anyone would argue to the contrary. I think there are kind of, I'm not sure about moral for me, but ethical issues certainly and legal issues. I think are going to come down the line. Because someone highlighted the other day that someone's already figured out how to use large language models like ChatGPT to comb Apple podcasts. So literally look at every podcast on Apple Podcasts, listen to it all, transcribe it all, and then allow you to ask them questions about content based on it. So I now never have to listen to someone's monetized podcast to get their insights on something.
Okay, well now, all right, so now you're talking about the Clip Notes problem.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, how bad of a thing it is? I could watch NASCAR. I could spend 3 hours watching NASCAR and letting them get my Nielsen rating numbers so they can build ad revenue. Or I can do the smart thing and watch ESPN SportsCenter for the one crash that mattered.
But then, yeah, I mean, that's the flip side of that is no one thought about that when Blinkist came along.
Okay.
Because why is that different? Becomes the question.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting how, because it's Blinkist is in theory technology driven, but there's still a very human product interaction thing going on. But because it's AI, I feel like sometimes we read into a darker intent than what actually exists.
Mm-hmm. Maybe it's not that I want to steal from the industry. Maybe I'm just lazy as shit.
Maybe I would never have listened to that podcast because, hey, I don't. I just want the insight. It's an interesting thing, isn't it?
It's something. So doing content creation for Decks and Drafts, it was one of the things that I kind of acknowledged and appreciated. And I actually switched over, started up a Patreon where I'm just doing audio. Because there's part of me is like, man, I really like the perspective I have. And I have viewers who like love what I bring to it. But on the flip side, I've got a bunch of people who don't know when in a thing that's going to be. And the first thing that they see is, I heard that this was interesting, but do I want to invest 30 minutes of my time trying to find out why, when, why, how?
Yeah.
So I added the timer. I added like smaller things, set better expectations. And I love the living crap out of this thing that Olga says, which is it's still content dump.
Yep.
Not what creates content. The thing is, humans now we need to do is figure out where we actually add value.
Yeah.
Which goes back to kind of what I feel is going to be the thing in 2023 with all of these companies that bought this numbers thing.
Yeah.
Now they're going to need to add value.
And I feel like
it's just leading so much. Get a thought, because I really want to just bring this part up.
Yeah,
it's the letter I sent you yesterday.
Yes, let's run straight into that. And this is where I think this does have a positive helping point, because I've already started to use it, and I have started to use ChatGPT for this. Is what do I no longer need to do? Well, for one thing, I no longer have to remember coding syntax, because I can say, hey, I want a bit of JavaScript that does the following things. Okay, here it is. Mm-hmm. Done. Copy, paste, run in Storyline or whatever platform I'm running it in that day. So much quicker, so much easier. And it adds no value for me to spend my time remembering and doing that as a human. But it does shave off maybe 20 minutes of development time every time I'd write it.
I remember around the time where MapQuest was getting really popular. The conversation, there was the conversation of, is the internet a good thing? And this is when the internet was this is when the conversation of, is the internet a good thing as like an actual tool, not like, does it help us? Like, this is before social media. And one of the most interesting points, and I still think about this to this day, of one of the downsides, and this is very much something connected to my head, is personally, because of things like Google, because of all these tools, I no longer have to extend certain muscles and train my brain to do certain things. So my memory sucks because I don't need to remember things anymore. I've got Google. Now, at the time when the future of the internet was still kind of unknown, that was a different conversation, because if that was the trend for me and then suddenly the internet went away, then we're set up for the worst of failures. Don't really think it's going away anytime soon. So it's kind of like, so what? If you want to get that darker though, like, how smart do I have to be if the internet's always going to be there to kind of make up for my own kind of personal development gaps? And the only way you can counter a conversation like that is as a human, in those moments where as a human you need to be, that's all you have to rely on. Where and how do you add value?
Yeah, absolutely.
It was just an interesting thing.
Yeah, no, I don't. I think what it has forced is a conversation around, we need to separate the concept of being smart or intelligent or a good employee from being knowledgeable, because they aren't the same. Like some of the most knowledgeable people in the world can't do a damn thing other than sit on quiz shows and answer questions. You know,
I'm also saying, like, some of the people who can be perceived as the most knowledgeable or have, because of something that implied credibility.
Yeah.
I'm gonna hit a nerd example real quick on this one. Beckett. I don't know if you're familiar with Beckett. Beckett, which used to be it still is a magazine that used to be kind of like the end all be all for like sports card pricing and the state of the industry. They have expanded themselves into like grading, card grading and whatnot. But their big thing, if you take like the bare essence of it, is like collectibles and investments in that kind of space. Get a new CEO, big name. CEO, you expect things. First day interview of just what he thinks about Beckett in the industry and whatnot. Whips out, I don't know much about the collectibles scene, but NFTs seem cool. I'm like, oh God. The perception of credibility and intelligence is also a thing we have to deal with. Which is another. Can we just talk about this thing? We're dancing around this topic so goddamn.
Let's go for it.
Let's go for it. All right.
Whilst you bring up the article, extra points to Morgan for making a QI reference. That would have been a dream to go on there and look like a moron for half an hour. That would have been the highlight of my year.
All right. Quick, I need to start this with just a little bit of tea so everybody understands, especially now that we got some international viewers. Not everyone might be familiar with things that are happening in the United States right now regarding travel.
Do you want to share the article on screen, or do you just want to talk?
I can do that. Yeah, I can do it, because it's going to be a Facebook post for those of us, for those of you playing the home game. Copy link address. I'm going to share it with you. I shared it with you. You can do it to everybody. Yeah, are we just on YouTube though? Does it matter?
Yeah, we're just on YouTube. Yeah.
All right, I got it. No, actually, shoot. Hold on. Can you do this one, because it has to like shorten?
Yeah, not a problem. You sent it to me on the Facebook, didn't you?
I'm saying on LinkedIn. It links to Facebook.
Oh, you did.
All right, contacts. Here we go. Southwest Airlines is having themselves a month amidst just winter storms that are doing a heck of a lot of delays, and creating a lot of delays. Southwest also has the struggle that the system that they use to kind of move things around and guide things is provably not capable of making the adjustments necessary for the number of delays they found themselves dealing with. That's the easiest way to put this. The end result has been an almost dead stop of flights for the last 3-4 days. People who would have flights canceled last Sunday are not able to leave until tomorrow in some cases. It is a disaster of brilliant, spectacular proportions. Watching Southwest try to apologize for this, as well as not actually be able to get anyone home. People cannot go home. They don't have states. They don't have states. They don't have staff. Because the way they function, my wife was telling me kind of this part, because of like planes that are expected to be in one place aren't. And because their system can't really adapt to that kind of change, they can't, oh my gosh, there's just no movement. So this guy, this long text guy, who I don't exactly know. So we're going to just own up the idea that this resource could also just be garbage. However, there's some very interesting points that talks about how Southwest had been setting themselves up for failure for a while. They never worked on the infrastructure of things. They never, yeah, it's a link. If we can link it, it'd be killer.
Yeah, I shall drop
that might
the link.
work. Yeah, that link might work in the YouTube. So it's a whole thing about how the business never really focused on kind of the infrastructure side and, the how do we kind of plan ahead for stuff, and really though those back ends, this is a disaster type of things. And when now it mattered, now you needed to rely on those systems that you never really thought were important, everything came crashing down in the worst of ways. There's one specific paragraph that I think is brilliant. And the reason I brought this up is because I think it's also very key in, one, any industry, but two, especially L&D. And you and I have talked about this a number of times. I'm just going to read it out. It's in the middle. But as time went on, the operation began to deteriorate. There was little investment in upgrading technology. After all, how do you measure the return on investing in infrastructure? Oh, my heart. Put that on a bumper sticker. There was little investment in upgrading technology or the tools we needed to operate efficiently and consistently. As the frontline employees began to see the deterioration in our operation, we began to warn our leadership. We educated them, we informed them, and we made suggestions to them, but to no avail. The focus was on finances, not operations. As we saw more and more deterioration in our operation, our asks turned to pleas. Our pleas turned to dire warnings, but they went unheeded. After all, the stock price went up. So what could be wrong? I love it so much. That is such a powerful statement, especially in L&D, where one of my biggest struggles is that people don't entirely understand what it is we do. And because it's aligned to the idea of anybody can do this. Anybody can make a PowerPoint and call it good and you don't understand what the real value is, the long-term value. What happens when the documentation can't be found, when you build silos? What happens when you're suddenly having to spend all this money on collation? What happens when you actually need to hire a knowledge manager or somebody to collate all the crap that you didn't just think about in advance? This stuff you don't see because you just look at the job in front of you and say, I can do that. And you don't think about the long-term things and the further stuff down. And then what makes it even worse is at the end of the day, the people up here just see that people are trained. People are fine. The numbers are up. We're fine as a business. Why are you saying there's a problem? We seem to be doing okay. Oh man, and in L&D for us, that's retention numbers. That's why I'm such a stickler for find actual tangible feedback. Find things that actually prove that what you're doing is right. If you are training people, but that staff is getting fired or leaving every 3 months and your turnover rate is insane, and the only thing that started them off was your training, yes, you got them trained, but you have a bigger problem. And monetarily, that's the cost of hire. That's the thousands of dollars you spend maybe on a recruiting agency, on license, on technology. That's the downturn effect of stuff like that. But if the business is fine, then who cares? I love this article. I love that sentence, or I love that paragraph, because how do you measure the return on investing in infrastructure? That's how you find those lines of where's the downstream, what's the problem and how much does that cost? And then that tail end is, but the business seems to be fine. You're not nearly the problem you're saying. I have the proof right here. No, you wait for it. Just wait for it. But that goes in line with so much of what we were talking about of value, of those mediocre standards. The stock price went up. We got all these users. Figma got all these users. That's great this year. But what happens when everybody else develops technology to just blow you out of the water because you thought that that's all you needed? We don't need to innovate that hard. We got all the users. 2023, that's going to need to be a thing. That's going to have to be acknowledged, because that's going to be the conversation that happens. The numbers went up. Everybody bought into L&D. But then the return on investment in that infrastructure is going to need to show. And L&D has a history of not really knowing how to show that return on investment.
So
complain about it all year. All right, that's it. That's my rant. That's my cool little story.
There, so Morgan's just dropped this in here. IT security just arrived at that conclusion. L&D will have to wait. I think the kind of slightly sad thing is, and I was chatting to someone about this the other day, I feel like a good chunk of L&D does get this. I feel like
L&D professionals.
Yeah,
not readers.
Maybe. I don't know. It's that simple a split. Because I don't know. I
have such a dark history the last 3 years that I left the industry because of it. So I'm probably not the best person to respond any further than that. So I'm gonna give that to you. And I'm gonna leave to you because I'm low, and I gotta go fix that.
Cool beans. I mean, yeah, I'm not going to pretend that I'm going to be the voice of unfettered optimism when it comes to this particular topic.
But you're British, though, so like you get extra points just already. See, even more earlier on, love all British panel shows. So my white Texas-born American ass is going to grab another beer and be part of the problem. I'll be right back.
See you in a minute. So we are once again having some technical problems. Let me just try and maybe fix that.
Am I having? Uh-oh. I see us still moving. Is this me?
I don't know. I can hear you.
That's still moving.
Sorry, at home. I know we usually have technical difficulties, but
you still seem fine. All right, I'm leaving. I'll be back.
Well, we'll carry on, and we shall see. We shall see what happens. I can't see Joey, but apparently you guys can, so that's all good. So yeah, I mean, my gut feeling is that there isn't. I don't think there's such a huge split between leadership and practitioner. I think the larger split is actually among on the ground practitioners. And I think it's partially a split in experience, and I think it's partially a split in fear. I think there are maybe those that have been in the industry for a long time and can't really be bothered to change. And I think there are those who have been in the industry a long time that have always been changing and always adapting. And then I think there are those who have been in the industry a short period of time and don't know any better. And simultaneously, those who do know better, but are, lured in, I would say, by the relative ease and the promise of quick success that comes from just churning out content. Rather than addressing real problems, rather than taking on things that you could actually fail at. Because let's be honest, when your metric is, or when the data that you're reporting is, I trained, I don't know, 600 new employees this year, well, you can't fail. Did everyone that you hire showed up to training? Yes. Congratulations, you're apparently a success. We always love to go, counting bums on seats, ha ha ha. But actually, how many businesses still do it? I would argue almost every single one of them still reports bums on seats, even when L&D knows it's not a useful metric. So that's slightly strange. And simultaneously, it's why I don't think it's particularly a leadership issue. I think it is an up and down kind of systemic problem that exists in leadership and exists in the practitioner level. I guess the more important question, really, as opposed to where the problem is how do we fix it? And I don't think, like, there have been lots of very good answers, but none of them have worked. And I kind of get to the point, and this is where I think I'm not going to be an optimistic voice. I think over the next couple of years, we need a little bit of a question asked to the industry. Do you want to actually work in L&D and make a difference? Or do you want an easy ride in your organization? Because I could, or have worked in many internal L&D teams, organizations, and groups where there are people there who could not care less whether or not they are having an impact to the business. They are there because at some point they were good at something, and so they became a trainer.
And they got a training manager because they worked for a startup. And he was
maybe, but I mean,
at least that's direct to me.
Yeah, my experience that I'm quoting here is really from bigger organizations. That doesn't really happen. But anyway, it does, but not that often. Startups and insane job titles are another issue, I think.
I went with the beer that I think is going to exemplify what 2023 should be.
I kind of want to say 2023 needs to be a bit ruthless. Like,
good.
Sorry, go on.
I was gonna do the ruthless thing. Actually, I'm forming a sentence in my head.
Yeah. I'm trying to figure out how I want to say this, because what I don't think no one wants to see redundancies and people losing their jobs and blah, 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 blah at a human level. But in terms of industry health, I do think we need a firm challenge from the organizations that we work for to say, do you want to make the boat go faster? If the answer is yes, amazing. We will support you. We want you here. What do you need? If the answer is no, get the hell out of the boat. Because at this point, you'll just wait. And it sounds very harsh, but I feel like our industry has got to the point where that is what we need.
Yeah, you need to be harsh. Too much skating. Because you were talking about kind of what do we want, oh God, it was kind of what level for L&D, and how do we really show that nothing's really worked. Here's what I think is going to happen. Here's actually, this is a silver lining thing. This is actually something I'm really looking forward to because of what happened in 2022. And I feel like this is also something that was a bit of a trend in 2022 for people, and feel free to, like, everybody in the chat, I love your thoughts on this one. Courtesy of all of the acquisitions and just the upward trend of the industry, I think one of the other things I've also started to notice as I've kind of poked around like LinkedIn, and I've seen like the job titles, and I've seen how people talk about it, and especially through the acquisitions, I think something that has also happened, which is not something we've really seen before, is that L&D has a seat at the table. And they have a seat at the tables they don't normally get to sit at, because for me at least, they're often just seen as like the end result. We're going to implement a new policy. We're going to implement a new thing. We're going to bring in a new technology. We're going to make all of these decisions off in the end on how it's going to impact the business. And then we're just going to let training know they're going to go do it. When you spent billions of dollars on the industry, you bring them to that table. You bring them in early. And I actually had the luxury of kind of seeing this in action when I worked at Constant Contact. Me and Constant, we're not the best of friends for multiple reasons. However, the VP of L&D, they had a VP of L&D. The VP of L&D was right up at C-level with everyone else. And from that, he was able to see the directions that the company was going, and he was sharp enough to be able to plan for it and guide our team down something, knowing that if we wanted to implement something, it took 6 to 12 months. It wasn't a knee-jerk thing. So we actually created a system that worked very well because he was at that table when those decisions were being made, and being able to be like, all right, here's how I feel this is going to impact, because I'm in line with support. And I know that support leverages the knowledge base. And I know that the knowledge base, I know that the metrics for that is how many touches does tier 2 need, and half of those, how many of those can be handled by Flick through a single FAQ, right? And he was able to see all of those in line and be able to help kind of drive policy by just being there and knowing how the flow of information from leadership impacted its staff. Whereas normally I'm used to that flow of information, it does travel, but as an L&D guy, I'm just kind of stuck with, can you communicate this? Not how do we approach this conversation? And maybe even sometimes it was like, is the policy just missing a clear avenue? Because as much as we look at L&D as kind of top down, and we are the sharers of information, we're also the receivers of its response. And in the case of Constant Contact, they were able to appreciate that and look bottom up. So again, it's those metrics of, the stuff that you put out and the way that you wanted to put it, the stuff that you focused on, support and sales, they didn't resonate with that the way that you thought they were going to. That led to call times, that led to all these things. And after a while, he gets into a trend of realizing and recognizing the types of information delivery and the types of policies that just don't work. And what's tone deaf with those teams, and being able to say, I'm going to get in the middle of this. So to bring that into where I like this, when you spend that kind of money on L&D, you're going to put people at the table. And they get to, oh God, perfect. They get to be proactive. They get to be data driven. They get to look at the relationship. They get to be the actual glue between leadership, development, support, end user. L&D is the only one that touches all of them and has to actually react to every single one. And because they're there in 2023, I feel like you're just going to get that sharper professional that does find those metrics, that can speak to those metrics. Like for those of you who are like looking to move up, understand how to talk to C-level about L&D in a way that's going to resonate with them, and because you're gonna get to be in the room finally. I'm actually excited for that part. I'm really excited for that. And that's kind of why I think 2023, they're going to get kicked in the head if L&D can't find its like how it defines value, because they're going to be in that room. They're going to be at that table, and they're going to be like, I get that, L&D has this natural state of being useful and great, but like at this stage, I actually need numbers. You can't sell me on the feels like I can with other departments. So I'm excited for that. I think because of that upward thing, I actually see brighter stars shining in better ways. It's just a matter of, is the industry as a whole going to take it, or are you just going to have those pockets of brilliance? You just might have a couple more.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where I'm at. I don't think that no one is doing it. I don't think that it's even particularly difficult to get right this stuff. I think this is the easier stuff that we need to change. But I do think it is pockets. Yeah. But yeah, I think
wheat ale fermented with Voskavike. I don't know what Voss is, but anyway. Anyway,
that does sound very nice. But yeah, no, I do. I think what we have now is pockets of excellent practice, and resistance to taking it on board. I think largely due to fear.
I like that. Can you do the thing with Olga's last one?
Oh yeah.
I don't know what the thing is. Get rid of the classroom view on perception of learning and get into business objectives.
Yeah.
There's two ways to ask the same question, right? Why do you want to be a trainer? Like, why do you want to be a teacher? And then that answer is like the feels. It's always the feels. For me, it was, I love the light shining. I love watching somebody just get it. But investment in training. No business is going to say, because I like watching the light in someone's eyes.
Yeah, no, it's and I think this is the slightly tricky thing, is that our industry does or has typically in the past drawn that as a very positive thing.
Mhm.
That a love of learning and education and all this stuff is, who we are and what we're about. And I wouldn't ever want to lose that completely. But we're not teachers, we're not educators. Indeed,
You sure about that nowadays? So many of them have moved over.
Yeah, and to be very clear, I'm not anti move between industries. I move between industries. I move from sort of people management and sales over to training. I think anyone can work in our world, but increasingly, what we need are people who, as you said, aren't quite so focused on those typical mushy things and are far more focused on how do I best serve the organization. But the biggest challenge I think here is that we hear a lot about how L&D has to stand up for itself and teach the business and tell it when it's wrong and blah 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 blah. And I always just want to scream, no, what L&D needs to do is wind its neck in and remember that it's a servant organization. We are there to enable and empower the organization to achieve its goals.
Well, maybe that's your answer. Maybe in there lies the actual answer with why the industry can't wrap its mind around it. I'm going to go to LinkedIn and I'm new to the industry and I want to learn how to succeed in this industry. And what am I going to find? How to be a better trainer, how to learn tools, how to really get the most out of the trainer-trainee relationship. And there's just not a lot on the trainer-stakeholder relationship. There's just not. One, it's really hard because it's, every business is different. But there are some business basics, I think, that exist out there.
Oh, yeah.
At the end of the day, people should know how to do their job. At the end of the day, people should, you should not have to worry about these training officials. You shouldn't have so many conversations about the basics of an industry. You shouldn't have so many conversations about the basics of the industry. It's why my favorite question to ask when I was scoping a project was, what happens if this project fails? To a stakeholder. Because they have to look downstream because they're going to be they're the ones who asked for training. They never really get asked, why are you actually pissed off that the training doesn't exist?
Yeah.
Are you going to get to that point? That's a relationship with a stakeholder that you are creating. But the conversation is always the other direction. They need training. How do we train them best? No, how do we solve your problem is what I feel the industry is lacking. That conversation. I don't see a lot of. If you go into the Facebook groups and you go into LinkedIn's and you go how to be a great instructional designer, flip it on its head. I'd like to see more of it, actually. I'll leave it to you. I actually literally I snapshotted an image of, I think it was Forbes, somebody of the roles of an ID, and I just want to see how many of them are kind of in line with that. So I'm going to do that.
Yeah, no, so I think it's interesting. I think that it kind of relates back to the whole piece around relationships. I think we spoke about them middle of the year-ish, whether it's SME relationships within the training department, relationships within the business. It's an area where if you go into management, senior leadership, if you go into consulting, if you go into change management, if you go into risk management, if anything like that, you're going to learn all about the importance of your relationship with other parts of the business. And then you look at our world, the L&D space. I want to work in L&D. What do I need to know? Storyline, learning objectives. Really? That
correct.
Yeah. That's it's it
which
gives
is funny
a very
which is funny
view.
for all the people who talk about 4 levels of Kirkpatrick, they don't actually follow when it comes to whether or not they train somebody correctly on.
Well, yeah, I mean, whether or not Kirkpatrick has any great value to the world is, I think, highly questionable. That's maybe a discussion for next year. I am not a fan of the 4 steps of measuring absolutely nothing. It's.
I actually think that's brilliant, though. Something you just said. Which is the consulting.
Most things I say are pretty brilliant, so you'll have to.
It's the British thing. It really is. Car, I'm not a fan of much BS. So often when you're thinking about an industry and like the upward momentum from a job description standpoint, usually you start at the ground level, getting your feet wet, doing the dirty work, the creation and all of that stuff. And then you move up into kind of the ideal and the concepts and things like that. And what if part of the answer for training is actually to do the reverse? Is to get them thinking about, like, I want to be a good trainer. Awesome. Think from the perspective of a training consultant. Start there. So you can wrap your mind around the problems, because we're so busy about how do we execute once we have a solution, and we also complain that the solutions suck because we didn't really think about. So maybe I'd love to be like, I want to start you as a training consultant before I ever teach you a tool, and let's put your head in that space. Maybe for us it's the result, and maybe you should be the idea guy before you start executing. And it's a roller coaster, right? It's be the idea guy for a project, then execute on the project, and then look at the bigger strategy. But maybe, I don't know, maybe flipping it on its head. At the end of the day, the struggle that we've always had, you and I, as we've talked regarding the L&D industry, is everything that we want just doesn't have meaning when you look at it. Or we struggle as an industry to show the true meaning. Maybe, I don't know. I'm throwing stuff out.
There you go, Kara. Call me old-fashioned, but you can't get results if you don't know the target, the needs assessment. Yeah. And I think this is kind of, and I think everyone has their own way of going about things, but doing a good needs assessment to me has always been about the right relationships. It's not just being able to technically complete a needs assessment. It's about being able to find the people you need to ask the questions to get the buy-in, to spend the time to do the needs assessment.
It's project management.
Yeah, there's so much involvement there. I mean, I've been talking a lot recently about like product mindset in L&D, and about how we can learn from the worlds of kind of UX and complete research at the start of our projects. And so much of that is contingent on you having the relationship to say, we need to do this to be successful, and your stakeholder going, okay, I trust you. Because fundamentally, I believe you are trying to serve my best interest, not preach your truth to the business.
And that goes with understanding their best interest.
Yeah.
That's, again, back to the seat at the table thing.
100%.
I understand your job. I understand your needs. I understand the downstream results of this going wrong. Yeah. We haven't done a lot of that lately, in my opinion.
Even at a more basic level, I understand the direction of the business.
Yeah.
Like, the number of people who do not understand the top priorities of the organization in which they are working is terrifying. And even worse than not knowing, in my opinion, are those who don't think it actually matters to their day-to-day job. Everything you do should be in furtherance of one of those objectives, or you should be challenging, surely.
You know where that rears its ugly head, and it's something that I'm actually I love hearing that of. My decade in L&D is technical applications and understanding the rest of the business. Try to get a marketer or sales guy to talk to development, database development. It's not a thing. It's real. It's oil and water. It's really bad, but the two desperately rely on each other. So they have to understand, for me, is understanding the direction of the business. When I was working at Epsilon, there was a project called Unite. This was Unite. It was rough, because the way that it functioned is that Unite was essentially a CDP, a consumer data platform. Quick version of that, it brings in customer data and it attaches it to marketing statistics and everything it can to be able to send the correct message to the right person at the right time. Huzzah, easy version. So the sales guys hear the pretty cute, fun end of it. These are the buzzwords of, connection and relevancy and all of that. the database developers are looking at like what are the industry standards for us being able to bring data together? What can we do and how do we do it? How much time do things take? So while the sales guys are boasting all of these things about what can the concept of unity mean, the database guys are saying that's not a thing that works. That doesn't function the way you think it does. That's not actually possible. And on the flip side, you've got the product guys who are saying this is the industry standard. These are the best practices for how things can be assembled. This is how we're going to create specific data lakes. We're going to build clusters and do things in all of these specific ways, not respecting maybe the target audiences that the sales guys are going for. You put all this money and resources into a tool that is not what it's not the audience that we're coming after. Neither respected what each other was trying to do, and the business vision never was clear to both of them in terms that made sense for their day-to-day. And it was a disaster. And that's normally a disaster.
And that's why you need strong product managers. It's their job to bring those people together. Right. Got some great comments actually. So Olga, my boyfriend just did a training for a company and he suggested a needs assessment first. Lunatic. Company said no, just go do your thing. That's how they spent the entire training budget on a needs assessment.
Oh no. Oh, they came. So I assume they came back and were like, this didn't work.
Yep.
Oh.
That's and I think this is it. And I think sometimes, because I've done that in the past. Company says no, you're in house, you maybe don't have much of a say in it. You roll with it, right? But almost always it's some degree of a failure that results in coming back to a needs assessment.
It's appreciating. It's taking what makes sense and saying, does it make sense to the people who are coming in? I've got a story about Pokemon, but let's see more comments because there's one in quotes.
So we've got the Dr. Michael Allen quote, one of many, but I think it is one of the favorites out there. If content were enough, we'd only have libraries and not schools. And I think that's exactly it. And that touches on the point we actually had earlier about how memorizing stuff is not actually that helpful.
Not anymore. But I still want to put somebody into the Dewey Decimal System. Go have fun with that. That'd be a funny meme though at this point.
Oh dear me. And then just Olga saying always thankful for that quote. Yeah, I think it's as we're talking about people sort of getting into the industry, you couldn't go much further in the right direction than starting with sort of Michael Allen's books. What was it? Beyond Addy and the Guide to E-Learning. I think provide a pretty solid starting point at least. It's certainly a lot more than some of these other places.
It's also they're not end all be alls either. Like you take it, like you need to be able to adapt that crap. That's it.
Kara has been chatting with the Learning Pirate. I did the same earlier today.
Help me out. Is this a person or is this just a concept?
I love the idea that she is elevated beyond a person now and is a concept.
I don't know these things. All right,
yes, so that's phenomenal. Transcended being a singular person. But yeah, no, Lauren Waldman. She did an IDTX 2022 session where she actually showed us a brain cell. Not a brain cell, that's the wrong term. I want to say a neuron growing. I could be wrong. It was a while ago, and I have no memory for things like the detail.
I know, okay.
But the concept was phenomenal. Watching it grow and how it changed over time, amazing. Really phenomenal session. Not just to plug my own video, but you should go and watch it because she's got loads of incredible stuff coming out in 2023. Really fantastic stuff, and yes, she is a fellow shit stirrer in the industry. You are right. It's my channel, so I don't have to bleep myself out.
I always apologize if I collab on people who haven't been on their channels. Like, can I swear on this?
I feel like that kind of particular horse may have bolted at this point on this channel.
Yeah, for sure.
It's
like, we
fine.
start with beer.
Yeah.
Pick your battles, guys.
This is it. Well, at this point, I've slagged off anyone who might possibly ever sponsor an L&D channel, so there's no danger.
No, you know what you've done? You know, you've actually in fact proven why somebody would sponsor this channel if they want to be different. We sponsor the Dark Horse because that's the essence of what we're doing. We want to break the mold and break past the standards.
We don't care that you slag us off. Sponsored by Apple. There you go.
Project Charm. Think, oh God. Sponsored by Apple. Think differently. Was that theirs?
Was that Apple? Maybe that was Apple. Yeah.
Oh, I gotta look it up. Apple, think differently.
Buy an Android. There you go. That's thinking differently.
Yeah, think different.
Yeah. So
late 90s, early 2000s.
Oh, Apple, there we go. That's cool. Yeah. Was that before their It Just Works?
Yeah. Go along with it.
Yeah. It does work. You're just not using it properly.
That's the back of days where they were actually still innovating.
Yeah, that was nice, but short-lived.
So anyway, I had a Pokemon story.
Yeah, go for it. And then I want to talk about Deloitte once you've talked about Pokemon.
Yes. Oh God, yes. All right. So in the realm of understanding the business needs, I think part of this is going to be probably less internal and more external when it comes to developing training for the customer facing. I think part of understanding the business needs is also being able to understand the audience and the realities of the audience, which I did it in IDX talk called the marketing of knowledge. It was my first one.
It was very good.
Thank you. But part of that, Pokemon the trading card game. For those of you who are new, because we've had a ton of active viewers popping in and out. So I work for card games on the side. We'll do it this way. I want to teach you a card game. All right, I'm going to teach you a card game. You've never seen it before, and I've got to teach you the rules, the mechanics, all the things. And I go to a company and say we need to build a training program. We need to build training. We need to educate things. The natural inclination of that would be, emphasis on the rule book. There'd be how to play videos. There'd be all these things that you would expect when I need to teach you a game. I show you a game. Feel free to look up the Dice Tower and any of these big things. I'm showing you a board game. It's a 30-40 minute long thingamabob. Enter Pokemon TCG that has the same challenges. Oh my God, this is brilliant. I'm actually modeling my own thoughts based off of this. The Pokemon TCG training website, how to teach you. One is done in micro learning. It's all a minute to a minute and 15 seconds that just covers one rule, and then they all assemble into a bigger puzzle. The second thing, and this is something that if you don't know the business, you don't think about it, it's targeted to parents. It's not teaching the player how to play the game. It's teaching the parent how to show your kid how to play the game, because they knew that going in. They thought that part through. It even went as far as to go into when your kid goes to an event, here are the kinds of people you may see. And, here's the kind of kids your child might encounter and experience. And here's how to kind of build them, and kind of branch off into how they appreciate the game as they go forward. They target it towards to parents. If I, as a trainer, didn't really know it, I show up at Pokemon. I don't know enough about Pokemon. I don't play the card game. I'm just a trainer. And I'm told, can you teach the game? I go to the game design team and I ask, how do we train this? And then I kind of build from there. And I'm not naturally going to think that the way that the business wants to communicate with people is not to the players, but to the parents of players, knowing their target audience are kids. That site is brilliant. PokemonTCG.com, find the how to play. It is a masterclass in training to an audience, not training to the need. The need just happens. I'm finally gonna put it in. I love it. I love it so much.
So in the meantime, in the chat, we are having a bit of a what is your favorite Pokemon? Olga's gone Charizard. Like it?
We have to ask the obvious follow-up question. I'll do that in a sec. One, my favorite Pokemon is Jigglypuff.
Nice.
Hands down, 2 reasons. One, she's a snarky little shit. She is diva. She is such a diva, and like she is the Miss Piggy of Pokemon.
Oh, that's phenomenal. Love it.
She is diva-licious. Like, you were gonna listen to my song, and then when everyone's asleep because she doesn't quite understand how that works, she's like, and she goes on the warpath. She brings out the marker.
Yep.
Do not screw with the Miss Piggy of Pokemon. She will win. Don't start.
No, I must admit I have to stand by my option of Mr. Mime.
Mr. Mime's great.
I mean, he literally constructs things. He brings things into reality through his sheer strength of belief. That's awesome.
Right? Yeah, it's glorious. Also, like the whole Mr. I don't know if you saw Detective Pokemon. If you haven't, you should. It's actually phenomenal. The whole Mr. Mime angle was amazing. Oh my god, it was so great.
It's the scene where he gets interrogated. Oh,
yep.
If you haven't watched it, go watch it. It's amazing. But the film is, by all accounts, a terrible film. But there are some hilarious moments.
I'm gonna go with it's terrible if you try to analyze it the same way you analyze what would be good films. But I had so much fun watching it, and I actually very much appreciated a lot of the meta humor.
Yes, it was very much a film made for Pokemon fans of our era. That's and the minor Kara with Zapdos, which is cool Pokemon, like it.
Right, having to have Machamp direct traffic because he has 6 arms, so it makes the most sense to do that. Like. That's Pokemon IDTX. That is practical use of your Pokemon right there. Second reason I love Jigglypuff is I am a firecracker with her in Smash Brothers.
Oh dear. Oh wow.
Fair enough. Right, to the crew.
Fair enough.
To the crew.
Right.
I have to add.
Let's move on from Pokemon to one cool thing that I was reading about last week. I can't even remember now. Deloitte. And I felt this Deloitte story's got a lot of play on social media already, but I feel like the focus is ever so slightly in the wrong place.
Okay. Interesting. Okay.
So Deloitte invests 1.4 billion in the future of learning and development. So you can guess where a lot of the focus was here. 1.4 billion. Oh my god, it's insane. What a huge sum of money. So what they haven't just thrown this money at L&D, thank goodness. They'd have bought all the authoring tools and a couple of LMSs. Instead, they've got this Project Hunt 120, 120 being the kind of conceptual speed of thought, 120 meters a second, etc. But the idea is it's kind of difficult to really understand what the idea is, but it seems like, based on their quotes, Project 120 enables more tailored, relevant, and in-the-flow learning for all professionals, building agility now for the business opportunities of tomorrow. Very much a marketing line, I think it's fair to say. We're reimagining learning experiences, and I'm confident in our new approach will continue to meet and exceed the evolving needs of our people and our clients. More corporate bull. However, later on, we get into some slightly more, I think, meaningful statements. So we feel an immense responsibility to support the growth of our people. Good, but not particularly helpful when you're talking about 1.4 billion. Project 120 broadens the aperture of professional development from focusing solely on the professional to focusing on the individual, enabling them to thrive holistically in business and in life.
Great,
Now,
more AI.
unfortunately, it does sound like they used an AI to write this crap. However, under those ridiculous statements, I'm hoping I'm kind of reading this right, is that they're kind of moving away from this, how do we generate or how do we just support performance today? And how do we just or not just kind of secure you for your next role on or future proof against X, Y, or Z leaving the business? How do we actually start looking at predictions for what our customers will need 5, 10, etc. years down the line? How do we start really looking at that kind of talent funnel within the business? Because so often I think we talk about succession planning as, well, if Terry quits, then Jane can have his job because she's pretty much qualified, and then, you know, Arnold can have her job and everyone moves up a bit and all that kind of stuff. Whereas this kind of sounds like it's looking in that direction. But I think the bit where everyone's focused on the wrong thing is everyone's thinking out, what can you buy for 1.4 billion? And I saw one take that was, oh, well, if you divide that by the number of people in the business, it's only this much per head. You know, you could spend that on going to one webinar. I feel like that's the most L&D take ever. How can we take $1.4 billion and spunk it up the wall on content? Like, that is just, to me, I saw that and just thought, yep, that's why we shouldn't be listened to as an industry. Because the first thing we did was stop thinking holistically and at business level and look at individual user. You know, I can almost guarantee, touch wood, and I really hope they're not breaking it down on a per head basis and buying content for people. You know, that would be insane. I would hope to a certain point they're almost not creating that much content.
Should we ask Deloitte what learning style they're going to implement to make sure that each individual, like, what's the popular one that's going to get each individual?
You've got to do them all. So you're going to need to split that 1.4 billion into 3 separate pots of money to address your auditory, visual, and kinesthetic learners. That's always step one when you've got budget.
Right. We understand that everybody learns things differently. So we have tailored many different courses for your specific tastes. So which would you prefer? Desktop, mobile, or a tablet?
Well, this is it, yeah. But no, it seems to me, based on, you know, a lot of the articles that are out there from Deloitte about this, a lot of the thought that they've been putting out into the industry, that they're not looking to just churn out crap into their business. They're looking at something that's much more like a sort of consultancy within the org to say, hey, we need skills in this development. How do we generate them? How do we curate them? I think there's also been a confusion that this is somehow the L&D budget. It's obviously not. It's an investment in a specific project. And I love the fact that it is a project. They haven't given this money to L&D. They've given it to Project 120, which almost, in fact, we know from the article that I'm looking at anyway on, oh, God knows what this site's called, Cision PR Newswire. It's some kind of news aggregator. They have a corporate sponsor, which is Anthony Stephen, Principal, Deloitte Consulting LLP, and Project 120 Executive Leader. So they've got a consultant. This is it. Not an L&D person. Then, you know, so they're not called the head of L&D. They're not called the head of learning design. They are a principal consultant.
So, all right. So I'm actually on the site looking at introducing Project 120. His title on this is Executive Leader.
Nice.
Project 120, which one feels duplicative. But two, like, it just, I align it with like executive producer, which you don't actually need to have any you don't have to be a part of any of it. You don't have to know anything about it. That's a title you can buy. It's a title you can buy.
Yes, I don't think that's well. Again,
it's weird.
It's tricky because I don't think that is the case here. He seems very, from the couple of conversations I've had with people, he seems involved. I mean, Deloitte have a pretty
They're rock
reasonable
stars.
track record, yeah, of kind of maybe not getting everything right, but they don't. Well, they certainly don't waste money. At the end of the day, they're a risk business at their core, you know. So if they're willing to do this, I think I understand why the focus has gone to, oh my god, 1.4 billion, isn't that amazing? And yes, it is. It's fun. I wish I had that budget. Everyone wishes they had that budget. But more than that, I think it shows
$50
that,
per headset.
yeah,
1.50, 1.4 is great.
this is it. But I think at a time where we are going into a kind of, relatively speaking, an economic downturn, it is good to see larger organizations doubling down on future of employee development, etc., etc. I think it sets a very positive direction. But I think it also acts as a little bit of a challenge to the industry that says, yes, there's a downturn. Yes, all this is going on, but clearly Deloitte had a case put to them to say, here is the value we can drive to your business through this project. We want 1.4 billion US dollars to do it. And Deloitte, not a company that, like I said, is prone to doing crazy off the wall stuff, went, yeah, all right. That's probably not the exact conversation that happened, but at some point, they have now agreed to hand over 1.4 billion US dollars to what is ostensibly a L&D project. So the idea that it can't be done, I think, has to now go away. And instead, we have to challenge ourselves. What's the difference between my pitch and the pitch that was given to Deloitte by these people? What are they talking about that I'm not talking about?
I think there's an answer in their Deloitte page
on
that exact kind of question, and it's something that I've also noticed with other, seen as a company benefit, which is really cool. Which is, we're going to invest in your professional development that carries outside of this company.
Yes,
which translates from a business perspective of, we're so confident you're going to want to make a career here. We're going to give you this so that way you can take those skills and apply them to us. But also, like, it's almost like a challenge accepted. On the Deloitte site for Project 20, there are 4 things that they state Deloitte professionals can anticipate in 2023 and beyond. These are kind of cookie cutter, but whatever. Personalized pathways. That's where I went with AI, by the way. Personalized pathways. Live immersive experiences. I'm going to skip one. An expanded Deloitte University. Duh. But market recognized certifications.
There you go.
If I'm going to put $1.4 billion, we just got free brace certification opportunities. So, like, take the tests. $500 a test. And Deloitte's not small.
Yep.
So it makes me really wonder how much of that maybe goes towards some of that stuff and building those certs. I know how much a cert takes. Not that I feel like 1 billion of it goes to the certification part, but that takes that's more of a personal investment thing than it is like a personal training thing. It's just, it was an interesting thing to see in there.
Yeah, and I feel like it's something people are looking for a lot more. Like, in the last couple of years, people really seem to suddenly care, at least in my world. No one really gave a damn about certifications outside of legally mandated ones, obviously, you know.
I'll have a question for you once you're done.
In the last couple of years, I've really seen an uptick in kind of like, is this course a certified course? Do I get a globally recognized qualification after the fact? One thing Kara said, actually, at ATD this past year, Brandon Carson said Walmart is building out their L&D strategy for the next 3 to 5 years beyond current associates.
Ooh.
See, and you think that's got to be an industry where it's very easy to see your people as high turnover, very low retention, all that kind of thing. But clearly they're not doing that. Like, that's
McDonald's complex.
Mm.
That's the way that McDonald's runs.
Yes.
Is they don't try to bring you into McDonald's just knowing that you need a job, you need to pay a couple bills. They sponsor things like they used to sponsor the junior achievement programs, but they want to give you the tools necessary to build a career and say, hey, this is going to be a way to do it. And it's why there was a time in the 90s and the early 2000s where McDonald's did a big push on finding the CEOs where their first job was McDonald's.
Yeah.
It was a big thing. That's fine. It's cool. Good job. Good. Do that, Walmart. Like, acknowledge and embrace the fact that people are probably not going to be lifers at Walmart. And
but
maybe
that doesn't mean you have to just cast them out. That's, yeah.
Well, maybe if you're smart, if they're real smart, which it's Walmart, so I know they're not. No kidding. They've done well. But maybe it's a matter of, we want to start you off right, knowing that we won't be, you're probably not, as an associate, going to be sticking around for us too long. But that boomerang could come back. You do the associate stuff because you're like 60, like, we're not making you a manager and all that stuff, but we want to give you the tools so that way you rock star in the industry. And then when you're like evaluating those elements of life, you kind of go back to this experience with us and you come back and be a manager for us. You come back and do like those types of things. And maybe they're thinking the boomerang, which would be so cool. If they were playing the long game like that, that'd be so cool.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. Makes an awful lot of sense.
And that could be the case here with the market recognized certifications of, hey, the market might turn to the point where we can't keep you or whatnot, but like, hey, always keep us in your mind. It is an employee's market right now.
Well, the thing is as well, like Deloitte is the prime example of a business that isn't a business. Like Deloitte is not a business. It's like 60 businesses under this kind of Deloitte-shaped umbrella. They are truly global. Like anywhere in the world you say Deloitte, broadly speaking, people have heard of it. They know what it is. Not literally anywhere, but pretty much anywhere. Anywhere that cares about the global certs they're going to create. And they've kind of recognized that, I think, really important thing of, if the industry improves, they improve. And if they can become known for improving the industry, if everyone wants to employ an ex-Deloitte employee, well, that's only going to be good for them. It will drive new employees, it will drive return employees, and it will drive customers.
These guys clearly know their business. And the guys that we train who move out of Deloitte to become VPs at XYZ companies, congrats. That's a warm lead.
Yeah.
For the future.
This is it.
I want to ask you
said you had a question.
I had a question for you, because it goes to the comment that you were talking about of like more businesses, you're seeing more movement towards the certification courses stuff.
So, see that, Kara. Thanks for joining us. Have a great new year.
Have a good one. Good to see you. How much of an issue and how much news has the UK had when it comes to the end and the legal end of technical schools and colleges? Have you guys had a lot of that issue out there?
No, to be honest, technical schools aren't a thing here. And by college, that means something different. So
college, university,
people get bachelor's degrees in the States, right?
Yeah, like some level of
university for us. That's fine. Yeah,
adult education, post-secondary kind of stuff. Okay. So I wonder, that might be why it's a bit of a surprise to you. And I'm like, what are you talking about? We in the States have the downward spiral of those technical colleges of, you want to learn a skill, like the trade schools, all that stuff. They're like the scams, and they're actually losing like federal lawsuits where they have to give tuition back to people. And I went to the Art Institute. I'm a part of that. I'm working on it, but like, we had all of those where the trade stuff was get a degree in XYZ trade thing. And then all those colleges went under for garbage business practices. The most notable, the most common one being lying to people about the job placement rates.
Right.
And saying, if you got a job at McDonald's because you couldn't get a job in the industry from our education, we still counted that as the job placement rate. We still leveraged that. Like, so they were defrauding people they were defrauding the admission process. But it was all these people who were going to college to get a trade because they wanted a degree in that trade. Those are all getting shut down. It's not that it's not even just that the industry has been slammed and has no integrity anymore. It's that there's literally no place to go to get trained. There's no place to get a degree in certain things. So naturally, the only step is the certification. How do I show you I know something without the degree? The certification. That's so in the States, certifications are massive. They're so massive. I personally hate the mindset around them because I don't see certifications as a proof of anything more than I see them as marketing. So I like portfolios more than certifications. Show me what you actually did, not that you're great at the Jeopardy category of it.
And I think
that's how we got there. I think, personally.
Yeah, so I guess it's slightly different here because here it's kind of always been the same. Like if you want to learn a trade, generally you get an apprenticeship, and then you work for a company paid usually like 4 days a week, and then you do 1 day at what we would call college, but wouldn't be college to you. You're not doing a bachelor's degree, you're doing A levels, which is the level before a bachelor's degrey.
Or unpaid internships.
Or an MBQ if you're from the UK and you're going to correct me for using the wrong term. But yeah, that way you are in a job anyway, but you're being subsidized by the government because you're still in education as well. So you learn the trade, you get qualified, you already have a job. Huzzah.
We don't really have any protections that say you can be an intern and you don't have to get paid for it. Like it's abused out here.
So like internships really just aren't a thing over here. It's always baffled me. Sorry, you do a job and you don't get paid. Yeah, that doesn't sound good.
That's why the joke of you get paid in exposure, like that's a big thing out here.
Yeah,
that's a thing. Like I hired a very, very part-time social media marketer. But during the interview process, I wanted people to do an assignment. And even then I was like, I'm going to pay you for 1 hour of your time to do this. Cause that's just, I gave him $25 for doing it.
Yeah. I think that's a must. You can't ask people to do free work. You just can't. It's not acceptable. Like if you need to see examples, then you should tell them that during the job application and ask them to submit a portfolio. You cannot be setting them unpaid work. I just don't think it's right.
And be okay. Like if they don't have a portfolio, maybe you can inspire. I don't know, maybe you inspire, but like, okay, well, that's going to be, it'd be more like I can inspire if you want to do one, but like, I'm going to be grading off of that. I wouldn't like force it. I wouldn't make an assignment as a forced part of an interview process. But if somebody says like, I don't have a portfolio, I would have no problem if somebody came to me and said, well, I'd love to see some of your work. If you have anything to maybe put together, this is something that could inspire, but I'm still going to weigh whether or not I move you forward. Shoot. As I would talk through that, that's just a bad idea. Never mind. I'm going to throw all it away because that's actually kind of coercion.
It's a tricky space. It really is.
But never mind, I wouldn't do that.
Yeah. And it's one of the reasons why I think having a portfolio is important in our space. I should point out, not in every space. Some spaces are different, but in our space, I think it is important to have it. But I do not think it's appropriate to look at someone's portfolio and go, well, none of this applies to my business, so I want a more specific example. That's bullshit. Like if you are not capable of looking for transferable skill sets and ability, then you should not be in charge of interviewing someone. It's pretty much that simple.
At the end of the day, the portfolio should just get you into the thought process. This is something I learned from the epic Kath Ellis, was when I built my portfolio, the concern that I had, of course, is that 99% of the work that I had was behind a paid firewall and was very not legal to share publicly.
Nice.
So she was gracious enough, because this was like right after I got let go from Braze of all places. She met with me for a half hour and said, these projects that you're afraid that you can't show and it's going to just bust your portfolio, talk the use cases instead. There's nothing that says you can't say you worked on those projects. Show the problem, show what you needed, explain what the functional result was, and then the actual results of it. And if you can do that well enough and really show that story, I don't need to see shit. It's not like I'm going to learn if I saw your Walgreens. I'm not going to learn anything if I saw your Marines thing. Bye, Olga.
No, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, thanks for joining us, Olga. Have a fantastic new year. And in actual fact, it is 1 minute to 10. So we are right up against the edge of the show. Just real quickly to wrap it up then, let us know in the comments what you're looking forward to in 2023. And just to close us out, Joey, if you had to pick one thing that you're looking forward to in 2023, what would it be?
You know mine. Mine's cheating, which is the birth of my kiddo.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's a good answer.
I'll give you.
In fairness,
yours.
If you'd have said anything else, this video could have come back to haunt you, right?
Yes, not getting murdered. All right, so
dear.
I'll give you a better. You do yours. What's your 2023, and I will give you kind of a better one that isn't obvious.
For me, I think it's taken a little bit of a step back. Engaging in a lot more reflective practice. Like I've spent the last couple of months really focusing on stuff by people like Julian Stodd and his work in quiet leadership and humble leadership, things like that, and really taking a bit of a critical view of the space and my part in it and what I'm doing and whether or not I'm really adding value to the industry and to those around me. That's my big focus for 2023, and to cut out some of the rubbish that isn't adding value.
I like that. I think I'm similarly aligned, honestly. Which for me, from that perspective, is taking more appreciation of the things that I am passionate about and genuinely enjoy and can get lost in naturally, as opposed to simply basing my professional decisions on stuff I know I'm good at.
Nice.
Because
stuff.
I think that's why I kind of pulled out of L&D a little bit. It's like I stopped being passionate about it and can't get lost in it outside of just yelling. But I also know I'd like to think I'm good at it.
That's but always the trap.
So, yeah, it's the trap. But in doing so, I've found a new passion for training the job tasks. I found new passion for the bullet points, not the title of the list.
I love it.
Because bringing that to Etsy, I get to do the needs analysis. I get to be the nice to have. I get to surprise and delight in ways that make sense and not just par the whole and have to explain why these unique things are cool and why they're valuable to somebody who is analyzing in the wrong way. Like, why didn't you just make a 30-minute webinar thing? Because I know better. Like, there's reasons. Like, why am I fighting against that? But instead, it's like, it's so cool that you put this together, and I feel it's going to be really useful. And I get to bring that true L&D knowledge into and I've also future-proofed this. And I've also thought about the 7 different departments that come together to make this work. And they're like, that's so cool, as opposed to, is it out yet? Because we release in 2 weeks, and how are you going to distribute? And it's like, can you just like the thing I did? I'm going to go back to, can you just like the thing I did?
Yeah, that's always the way, right?
That's where I'm at. I want to love the bullet points. Screw the list name.
Good stuff. Well, that brings us to the end of today's show. Thank you, everyone who has joined us.
I know, what? That was so cool. We're 43.
This is it. And I want to say a special thank you at the end of the year now to everyone who has supported the channel this year on Patreon, on Buy Me a Coffee or buymeabeer.com, and bought things from the IDT store. All those funds are going towards funding the IDTX conference in March, ensuring that it is free for everyone to attend and anyone to speak at, with no corporate sponsorship and no sales pitches allowed. So thank you for another amazing year. There are actually a bunch of videos going live tomorrow because I kind of messed up my release schedule. And so now I owe a lot of videos before the end of the month tomorrow. So do pop round and have a look. I think my current tally is about 8 going live tomorrow if I can finish editing them all. They're all pretty much there. So happy New Year to you all. Thank you for another amazing year. And we shall see you next time.
Happy New Year, Holcomb. Thanks for joining live. And cheers, everybody.